The United States government threw me in prison for 30 years.
Cat be cat.
Oh, you still got the...
No,
You want to talk about it? Remember, Ross threw me in the raft. Hounded me. She'll let me know if Ross starts acting out of turn. Invited Joaquin and I to the White House. And I said under one... Come on, you gonna come or what?
then I got married in this.
Okay, hey, I'm sure she...
Number one, land some beach kicks, and we run. Like,
Good.
Can you send it to me?
Yeah, I airdrop it to you right now.
Lose the mustache.
Oh, with all due respect, sir. But de pior she is.
It's my great privilege. It's even more Joaquin Torres and our own Captain America. If we ratify this treaty,
I don't know, but you gotta stop.
Agent Taylor, you too.
Except he did.
Maybe somebody got to him.
You're really defending a man who...
Isaiah looked like he wasn't in control. He had no idea where he was. This country. He's a soldier, a patriot.
You're not Steve Rogers.
Sorry.
Sam, what the hell are you doing?
Looks like I am that guy.
I could be court-martialed for this.
What in the world happened to make you shoot at?
Rain slams against metal like gunfire. Not distant, not imagined, real. And he's already bleeding before he understands why. He wakes on a roadside that doesn't feel like any place he's ever known. Mud thick as glue, air sharp with burnt rubber. The faint echo of sirens fading into nothing. His hands shake as he touches his ribs. Wet, warm, blood. But the strange part? He can't remember the moment that put him here. Not the crash, not the fight, nothing. Just fragments, flashes of shouting, a face he almost recognizes, and one sentence looping in his head like a curse. This was never supposed to happen. He tries to stand. His legs argue. The world tilts. Somewhere far off, a car door slams. Then silence. Deep, unnatural silence. No traffic, no voices. Just wind brushing through broken glass scattered across the road like frozen tears. He looks down. His car is twisted into something unrecognizable. Front crushed. Windows shattered. And inside, nothing. No driver, no passenger. Just an empty seat soaked in red. That's when it hits him. He wasn't alone. His breath catches. Fast now. Too fast. He stumbles closer. Heart pounding so loud it drowns out everything else. The passenger door hangs open, creaking slightly with the wind. Someone was here. Someone got out. Or was taken. And suddenly, the memory claws back just enough to hurt. Hands gripping the wheel. Someone yelling beside him. The flash of headlights coming straight at them. Then, nothing. He spins around, scanning the empty road like the answer might be hiding in plain sight. But there's no one. No skid marks. No other vehicle. Just him, the wreck, and the feeling that something is deeply, horribly wrong. And then, footsteps. Not his. Behind him. He freezes. Slowly, painfully slowly, he turns his head. But there's nothing there. Just the road stretching into darkness. But he heard it. He knows he heard it. The kind of sound that doesn't belong to imagination. The kind that means someone is close. Watching. Waiting. A cold wind cuts through his jacket, carrying something else with it this time. A smell. Metallic. Familiar. Fresh blood, but not his. He looks back at the car again. And for a split second, just a flicker, he sees movement inside. He steps closer, every instinct screaming at him to run, but his body doesn't listen. His hand reaches for the door. Hesitates. This is a mistake. He knows it. Feels it deep in his bones. Still, he pulls it open. Empty. Completely empty. But the seat is still warm. His chest tightens. Someone was here seconds ago. Close enough to touch. Close enough to breathe the same air. And now they're gone. Or worse, they're not. A sharp crack echoes from the trees lining the road. Not wind. Something moving. Fast. He turns toward the sound, pulse spiking, vision narrowing, and for the first time, fear stops being a feeling. It becomes a decision. Run or find out what's hunting him. Because whatever happened before the crash, it isn't over. Not even close. He runs. Not fast at first. More like a stumble pretending to be a sprint. His boots slip on wet gravel. Breath tearing through his chest. Ribs screaming with every step. But that sound behind him, it's still there. Closer now. Not footsteps exactly. Too uneven. Too too quick. Like something learning how to move as it follows him. He doesn't look back. Bad idea. He knows it. But fear locks his neck, keeps his eyes forward as the road stretches endlessly into darkness. Trees close in on both sides, their branches twisting like claws under the storm. The wind howls louder now, carrying whispers that don't sound like wind at all. You left me. He almost trips, that voice. Not loud, not external. Inside his head, familiar enough to hurt. He shakes it off, pushes harder, lungs burning as panic takes control. But then, another memory hits, sharper this time. The passenger seat, a hand gripping his arm, a face turning toward him in terror, and blood. So much blood. He slows, just for a second, and that's all it takes. A blur moves between the trees to his right, too fast to track, too solid to ignore. He stops completely now, chest heaving, eyes scanning the darkness. Rain stings his face, mixing with sweat, with something else. Something warm sliding down from his hairline. He touches it, blood, but this isn't from the crash. Fresh, dripping. His hand trembles as he looks at it. That metallic smell is again stronger now, suffocating. And suddenly, the silence returns. Total, absolute. Even the wind dies. Something's wrong, very wrong. Then, a figure steps onto the road ahead. Not running, not rushing. Just there, standing, waiting. He freezes. Every muscle locking as his brain struggles to process what he's seeing. It's a person. Has to be. Same height, same build. But the way it stands, head tilted slightly, arms hanging too still, it feels off. Like a puppet waiting for someone to pull the strings. Hey! His voice cracks, dry, desperate. I need help. The figure doesn't move, doesn't respond, just stands there in the rain, face hidden in shadow. And then slowly, it lifts its head. Lightning cracks across the sky. For a split second, the world turns white. And he sees its face. His face. Not similar, not close, exact. Same eyes, same scars, same blood running down the same side of the forehead. But the expression, wrong. A smile spreads across it, slow, unnatural, stretching wider than it should. Too wide, like it's learning how to smile by copying him. And failing, his stomach drops. No, he whispers. The thing takes a step forward. Then another. Its movements twitch slightly, like frames skipping in a broken film. And with every step, the air grows heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. You left me, it says. This time, the voice isn't in his head. It's right there. Coming from that thing. From him. He shakes his head, stumbling backward. I don't even know who you are! The smile widens. Liar. One word, but it hits like a punch to the chest. Because deep down, buried under the confusion, the pain, the missing memories, he does know. Or at least a part of him does. Another flash. The crash. But not an accident. A choice. His hands tightening on the wheel. The passenger shouting, begging. Stop the car, and him not stopping. His breath catches violently as reality starts clawing its way back. No, that's not. The thing lunges. Fast, too fast. He barely reacts, throwing himself to the side as it slams into the spot where he stood, gravel exploding outward. He hits the ground hard, pain shooting through his ribs, but adrenaline drags him back up instantly. Run, again. He sprints off the road this time, straight into the trees, branches tearing at his clothes, mud sucking at his feet. Behind him, he hears it, crashing through the forest, not even trying to be quiet now. It wants him to hear. It wants him scared. Good, because it's working. He pushes deeper, heart pounding, vision blurring as the forest swallows him whole. But then, something ahead. A light, faint, flickering, a cabin. Hope surges. Sharp, desperate, almost painful. He stumbles toward it, forcing his legs to keep moving as the growls behind him grow louder, closer. Almost there. Almost. The door bursts open before he can reach it. A woman steps out, eyes wide, breath visible in the cold air. She sees him, and for a moment, relief floods her face. Then she sees what's behind him. Her expression changes, instantly, from relief to horror. Get inside, she screams. He doesn't hesitate. He runs straight for her, crossing the threshold just as she slams the door shut behind him, locking it with shaking hands. The sounds outside stop immediately. No footsteps, no breathing, nothing. Silence. They stand there, both gasping, the storm raging outside like it's trying to tear the cabin apart. He looks at her, trying to speak, trying to understand, but she's staring at him like she's seen a ghost. No, she whispers, backing away slowly. That's not possible. His chest tightens. What? Her voice breaks. You died in that crash. Everything stops. Inside him, around him. Even the storm feels distant now, and then, from the other side of the door, a soft knock. 3 times. Slow. Patient. Waiting. The knock comes again. Slow. Gentle. Almost polite. But it lands like a hammer in his chest. No one moves. The woman stands frozen near the wall, her fingers gripping the edge of a table so tightly her knuckles turn white. He can hear her breathing, sharp, uneven, like she's trying not to scream. And him, he can't even breathe at all. Just stands there, staring at the door like it might explode. "Don't open it," she whispers. Too late. His body shifts forward without permission, like something deeper is pulling the strings now. One step, then another. His hand lifts slightly. "I need to know." Another knock. This time louder. "Stop!" she snaps, rushing forward, grabbing his arm. Her touch is ice cold. "If you open that door, it doesn't stop. Do you understand me? It doesn't stop." He turns to her, confusion burning through the fear. "What are you talking about? That thing out there. It looks like me." Her eyes flicker. Pain, recognition, something worse. "I know," she says softly. "That hits harder than anything else." Silence. Then, the handle twitches. Both of them snap their gaze to the door. It's locked, but it's moving, slowly turning, inch by inch. "No," she breathes, backing away again. It shouldn't be able to. The door bursts open. Wind explodes into the cabin, rain slashing sideways, papers flying, the lights flickering violently. He stumbles back as the cold hits him like a wave, but there's no one there, just darkness, just the storm. Empty. His heart pounds in his ears, too loud, too fast. He steps forward cautiously, staring into the void beyond the doorway. Nothing. Gone. A shaky breath escapes him. It's not there. Behind him, the woman doesn't respond. He turns. She's staring at something over his shoulder. "No," she whispers again. "It got in." His stomach drops. Slowly, he looks down. Wet footprints leading inside. But they're wrong. Bent. Distorted. Like something wearing his shape but not understanding how it fits. The lights cut out. Darkness. Total. He hears movement instantly. Not outside. Not far away. Inside the cabin. Close. Too close. "Don't move," she says from somewhere in the dark, her voice barely a breath. He freezes. Listens. There, behind him. A faint drag. Like skin brushing against wood. Then, breathing. Not his. Not hers. Something else. Right at his back. His throat tightens. Every instinct screams to run, to fight, to do anything, but he stands perfectly still, trapped between terror and something worse. Recognition. Because he knows that breath. He's heard it before. In the mirror. A hand touches his shoulder. Light. Almost gentle. His entire body locks, and then a voice right beside his ear. "You remember now, don't you?" His eyes widen, and the memories don't come back slowly this time. They crash in, the road, the argument. Her voice angry, desperate. "You're not thinking straight. Stop the car." "I can't," he shouted back. "You can. Just brake." But he didn't, because he saw it, that thing. Standing in the middle of the road, wearing his face, smiling, waiting, he swerved. Too late. The crash wasn't an accident. It was escape. His knees buckle slightly as the truth settles in like poison. "We didn't hit it," he whispers. The voice behind him chuckles. Low, broken. "No," it says. "You brought me with you." Something slams across the room, wood cracking, glass shattering, and suddenly the woman screams. He spins around just in time to see her dragged violently into the darkness, her body scraping across the floor, fingers clawing desperately at anything she can grab. "No!" He lunges forward, grabbing her hand for a split second, but something yanks her back harder. Too strong, too fast. Her grip slips, gone. The cabin falls silent again. No wind, no rain, no sound at all. Just him, alone, or at least that's what it wants him to think. A faint light flickers back on, and there, standing across the room, is him again. But closer now, clearer. And this time, it's not smiling, it's angry. "You were supposed to die," it says. His heart stops, because suddenly, he understands the real problem. The crash didn't create this thing. It was already there, waiting. And somehow, he took its place. It doesn't attack. That's the first thing that feels wrong. It just stands there, staring at him with that same face, his face, but now stripped of that twisted smile. Calm, focused, furious. Like a predator that's already decided the outcome. "You shouldn't be here," it says quietly. The words don't echo. They sink, heavy, final. He shakes his head, backing away, every step slow, careful, like sudden movement might trigger something worse. "This doesn't make any sense. I was in the car. I crashed." "You ran," it interrupts. Sharp, accusing, and suddenly the room feels smaller. "You saw me, and you chose to run." Another step forward. Its movements are smoother now, more Human, adapting, his chest tightens. You were standing in the road. What was I supposed to do? Stop. One word. Simple. Obvious. And it hits him like a blade. Because it's true. Because somewhere deep down, he knew. Silence stretches between them, thick with everything unsaid. Then the thing tilts its head slightly, studying him like a puzzle already solved. Do you know what happens? It asks softly. When something takes your place? His throat dries. He doesn't answer. It doesn't wait. You disappear. The lights flicker again. For a split second. He's not in the cabin. He's back in the car. Hands on the wheel. The road ahead. And that thing, standing there, waiting, then back, the cabin. The thing closer now. Too close. I was supposed to cross, it continues. Voice almost calm. That was the moment. That was the line. Its eyes lock onto his. But you broke it. I didn't know, he snaps, panic rising again. I didn't know what you were. Exactly. The word lands like a verdict. And then everything shifts. The air grows heavier, thicker, pressing down on his chest. The walls creak, bending slightly inward like the cabin itself is breathing. Something dark seeps along the edges of the room. Not shadow, not exactly. Something deeper. You don't belong on this side, it says, a step closer. He stumbles back, hitting the wall, nowhere left to go. Then where do I belong? A pause. Then where you were supposed to go. Cold. Final. And suddenly the memory completes itself. The crash, not just metal and glass, but impact. Violent. Unavoidable. His body thrown forward. Pain. Then nothing. No crawling out. No waking up. No survival. His breath shakes. I died, he whispers. The thing doesn't nod. Doesn't need to. You were never meant to wake up on that road, it says. You were meant to pass through. A low rumble shakes the cabin. Not thunder. Something else. Something below. The floor cracks slightly beneath his feet, thin fractures spreading outward like veins. From those cracks, a faint glow seeps through. Not light. Something darker. Something endless. He stares down at it, heart racing, dread crawling up his spine. What is that? That, it says quietly, is where you go when you don't run. His chest tightens violently. No, there has to be another way. There isn't. Another step. Now it's right in front of him. Close enough to touch. Close enough to feel the cold radiating off its skin. You took something that wasn't yours, it says. Time, breath, a place. Its eyes narrow. And now something has to take yours. The cracks widen. The glow beneath pulses. Hungry. The cabin groans like it's about to collapse inward. And then a sound. Weak. Faint. From somewhere behind him. Help. His head snaps to the side. The woman. Still alive. Somewhere beneath the floor. The thing notices. Of course it does. A slow smile creeps back across its face. But this one is different. Colder. Knowing. There it is, it whispers. The choice. His heart pounds. Louder. Faster. You can go back, it says, gesturing toward the spreading darkness below. Fix it. End it the way it was meant to end. The cracks split wider. The pull from below grows stronger. But if you stay, its voice lowers, almost curious now, you can try to save her. A beat, and watch what happens when you fail. The floor gives another violent crack. The glow surges. The woman's voice echoes again, fading, weaker. He stands there, caught between two impossible paths. Go back and die. Or stay and fight something he doesn't understand. His hands shake, mind racing, heart screaming, and the thing in front of him just watches, waiting, because it already knows something he doesn't. Whatever choice he makes, this doesn't end clean. The floor splits wider. A jagged crack tears across the cabin, wood snapping like bone, and that glow beneath surges upward, thick, pulsing, alive. It's not pulling anymore. It's calling. He stares into it, heart hammering, and for a second, he feels it. A strange calm beneath the terror, like stepping to the edge of something inevitable. Just fall, end it. But then, please. Her voice, weak, breaking, still fighting. That sound cuts through everything. His head snaps toward it, jaw tightening, breath turning sharp. No more thinking, no more weighing options. He chooses. I'm not going back, he says. The words come out rough, but solid. Final. For the first time, the thing's expression shifts. Not anger, not satisfaction. Something closer to interest. Then you'll break, it replies quietly. He doesn't answer. He moves. Fast. He drops to his knees near the largest crack, ignoring the heat, no, not heat, pressure, radiating from below. His fingers dig into splintered wood, ripping pieces away, widening the gap as the structure groans around him. Hold on, he shouts into the darkness. No response. Just a faint, dragging sound beneath him. Still alive. Still there. Behind him, the thing takes a slow step forward. You think saving her changes anything, it asks? He keeps pulling at the floor, hands bleeding now, nails tearing as raw determination replaces fear. I don't care what it changes. Another step, closer. She wasn't supposed to survive either. That makes him pause, just for a fraction. What? He mutters. And that's when the truth hits. Sharp, brutal. The passenger, the voice in the car, her, his grip tightens on the broken wood. She was in the crash, yes. The thing's voice is softer now, almost patient. She died with you. His stomach twists violently. No, I pulled her out. I remember. You remember what you wanted. The words slice deep, because suddenly, that memory feels wrong, blurry, forced, like something stitched together to hide something worse. She didn't wake up, it continues. You did. Silence, heavy, crushing. His hands stop moving. For a second, doubt creeps in, and the thing sees it. Of course it does. That's the problem, it says. You keep holding on to things that are already gone. A loud crack splits the room again, louder than before. The walls bend inward, the ceiling sagging as the glow below intensifies, spilling through the widening gap like something trying to break free. And then, a hand reaching up from the darkness. Weak, shaking, real. His eyes lock onto it. Everything else disappears. She's here, he breathes. The thing doesn't respond, because now it's watching, closely. He lunges forward, grabbing her wrist. Cold, slippery, but solid. He pulls hard, muscles straining, ignoring the pain tearing through his ribs. I've got you, don't let go. For a moment, it works. Her arm rises higher, her other hand clawing at the edge, her face almost visible through the flickering glow. And then the floor shifts. Violently. The crack widens in a sudden jolt, dragging her back down. No! His grip tightens, fingers locking around hers as his body slides forward, dangerously close to the edge. The pull from below intensifies, sucking at him, dragging him inch by inch. The thing steps closer, right behind him now, watching, waiting. This is where you lose everything, it says quietly. His arms shake. His strength is fading fast. The pressure below is too strong, too deep, like gravity itself is trying to claim him. He looks down at her, really looks. Her face, pale, terrified, eyes wide with desperate hope. And in that moment, something clicks. Another memory, clear, undeniable. The crash. Her body still, lifeless. His hands shaking as he pulled her from the wreck. Calling her name, no response. She was gone. From the beginning, his breath catches. This isn't her. Not really. Just like that thing, this is something else. Something wearing her face. Something pulling him down. The realization hits hard, and suddenly, the choice changes. His grip loosens, just slightly. Her eyes widen in panic. No, please, I'm sorry, he whispers. And then he lets go. Her hand slips from his, gone, swallowed instantly by the darkness below. The pull stops. Just like that, the cabin stills. Silence crashes in. Slowly, he pulls himself back from the edge, chest heaving, eyes locked on the place where she vanished. Behind him, nothing. No footsteps. No presence. He turns. The thing is gone. Completely. Only the broken cabin remains. Barely standing, barely real. And for the first time since he woke up, everything is quiet. But deep down, he knows. That wasn't victory. That was just the beginning. Silence stretches too long. Not peaceful. Not safe. Wrong. The kind of silence that feels like something is holding its breath, waiting to see what he does next. He stands there, chest rising and falling hard, eyes locked on the broken floor where she vanished. His hands still tremble, fingers curled like they remember holding on, letting go. That moment replays again and again, each time sharper, heavier. I dropped her. No. He squeezes his eyes shut. That wasn't her. The thought feels like a lie, but it's the only thing keeping him standing. A slow creak cuts through the stillness. He opens his eyes. The cabin is changing. The walls aren't broken anymore. The cracks in the floor? Gone. The glow beneath? Sealed like it was never there. Everything looks whole again, but wrong in a different way. Too perfect. Too still. Like a memory trying too hard to look real. His breath slows. Confusion creeps in. What is this? No answer. But then a sound, soft, behind him. He turns, and his heart stops. The woman stands there, whole, unharmed, dry, no blood, no fear. Just standing in the middle of the room like nothing ever happened. No, he whispers, stepping back. That's not possible. She tilts her head slightly, the same way the other one did. You let me fall. Her voice is calm, too calm. He shakes his head violently. You weren't real. A pause. Then, Neither are you. The words hit deeper than anything before. The room flickers. For a split second, he sees something else. A hospital, bright lights, machines beeping, a body lying still on a bed, his body, then back, the cabin. But now she's closer. You're still holding on, she says softly. That's why you're stuck here. He stares at her, mind racing, pieces finally starting to connect. This isn't real, is it? A faint smile touches her lips. Not cruel, not kind, just knowing. This is what happens when you don't let go. The air shifts again, heavy, pressing, but different now. Not pulling him down, not dragging him apart, holding him in place. You saw it, she continues. The moment, the truth. You were supposed to cross. Images flash again, faster now. The crash, impact, darkness, flatline. You didn't, she says. Another step closer. And now you're here. His chest tightens. Then what is this place? She stops right in front of him, close, too close. A space between decisions, a beat, between what is and what refuses to end. The words sink in slowly, painfully. He looks around again, the perfect cabin, the still air, the unnatural quiet, a waiting room. That's what this is, not life, not death. A pause, a delay. Because of him. Then why are you here? He asks, voice barely steady. Her eyes soften slightly. For you. Something cracks inside him. Why? Silence then, because you won't choose. The room flickers again, stronger this time. The hospital returns, clearer, doctors moving, voices urgent. Losing him, no response. We need to. Back to the cabin. He stumbles slightly, gripping the edge of a table. I'm still alive, he whispers. She doesn't answer directly. You're not gone, she says. A pause. But you're not here either. The truth settles in like weight, heavy, final. And suddenly, everything makes sense. The thing in the road, the crash, the copies, the choices. All of it. A fight. Not for survival. For acceptance. His breath steadies just a little. What happens if I stay? He asks. Her expression changes, just slightly. Then this continues. The cabin flickers again. This time, darker. More distorted. The walls bending. The floor cracking. That glow returning beneath. And it gets worse. A beat. And if I go back? She holds his gaze. You already know, the memory surfaces instantly. The road, the headlights, the impact, death, final, no coming back. Silence wraps around them again. But this time, it feels different, not suffocating. Waiting, for him. His hands stop shaking, his breath slows. And for the first time, he's not reacting, he's deciding. He starts, stops, swallows hard. And then, a loud, sharp beep cuts through everything. The world glitches violently. The hospital floods back in, machines. Voices. Urgency. He's coming back. The cabin fractures around him, reality splitting at the seams, and she's still there, right in front of him. Watching. Waiting. Because now, the choice isn't abstract anymore. It's happening. Right now. And whatever he decides, there's no middle ground left. Everything shatters at once. The cabin splits down the middle like glass under pressure, walls folding inward, reality tearing itself apart, and the hospital crashes through it all. Bright lights, loud, overwhelming, machines screaming now, not beeping, voices shouting over each other. Clear! A jolt. His body jerks, but he's still standing in both places. Half here, half there. The woman doesn't move. Now you understand, she says softly. He looks at her, really looks this time, and something finally settles inside him. Not fear, not confusion, clarity. You were never her, he says, a small smile. No, the world flickers again, harder, faster. The two realities colliding, overlapping, her face blending with the hospital room, her eyes reflecting flashing monitors and panicked doctors. Then what are you? He asks. She steps closer. Not threatening, not kind. Your last chance to choose. The words land clean. No mystery left. No hidden meaning. Just truth. Behind her, the hospital sharpens. He sees his body on the table. Broken, pale, barely holding on. Doctors moving fast, hands pressing, voices desperate. We're losing him! Another shock. His chest tightens violently. Pain explodes through him, real pain this time. Not imagined, not distant. It drags him toward that body, pulling him back into something heavy, something fragile. Life. But then the other pull. Cold, deep, final. The road flashes in his mind again. The impact, the stillness after, the quiet that came with it. Peace, no more fear, no more running, just nothing. He closes his eyes. For a second, everything slows. All the noise fades. All the pressure disappears. And it's just him standing in the space between. I was supposed to die, he says quietly. Yes, no hesitation, no comfort, just truth. And if I go back, It won't be easy. His jaw tightens, pain, recovery, consequences. The weight of what happened, of what he did. And if I don't, a pause, then you already felt it. The darkness, the pull, the end, silent stretches. But this time, it's not empty. It's full of understanding. He exhales slowly. And then he laughs. Not loud, not hysterical. Just a small, broken breath of something almost human. All of this, he murmurs, glancing at the collapsing cabin, the flickering hospital, the fractured space around him. All of this just to make me admit it. She doesn't answer, because she doesn't need to. His eyes lift. Steady now. Clear. I was afraid, he says, a beat. I didn't want it to end. The admission hangs in the air, heavy, real. And suddenly, everything stops fighting him. The pulling, the pressure, the noise, it all stills. Because now, he's not running anymore. He looks at her one last time. And now, for the first time, her expression softens completely. No mystery. No distance. Just quiet understanding. Now you choose. The hospital surges forward, the light blinding, the sound deafening, life reaching for him. The other side waits too, silent, endless, final. He takes a breath, feels it, holds it. And then he lets it out and steps forward. The world snaps, hard, violent, final. His body slams back into him like a shockwave. Air floods his lungs in a broken gasp. Pain detonates across his chest, his ribs, his skull, every nerve screaming at once as his eyes snap open under blinding white lights. Voices explode around him. He's back! Pulse rising? Stay with us! He chokes on air, body convulsing as reality locks into place. Solid, brutal, alive. Hands press against him, machines stabilize. The chaos slowly pulling back from the edge. But through all of it, through the noise, the pain, the light, he feels something else. Absence, the cabin, gone, the road, gone, her, gone. No more voices in his head, no more shadows wearing his face, just him. Alone in his body, alive. His eyes flicker weakly, unfocused, staring up at the ceiling as the world settles into something real again. But deep down, he knows. That place wasn't a dream, wasn't imagination, it was a line, and he crossed back. Barely. His fingers twitch slightly against the hospital bed, weak but real, grounding him in the moment as everything stabilizes around him. And for the first time since the crash, there's no fear. Just a quiet, lingering truth settling deep inside his chest. He didn't escape death. He chose life. And somewhere, far beyond reach now, something that once wore his face is still waiting at the edge of that road, smiling. One battle after another. There's something immediately intriguing about a film titled One Battle After Another. It doesn't promise a single grand war or a neatly packaged conflict. It suggests endurance, accumulation, survival through repetition. And that framing tells you a lot about the kind of director who would be drawn to this material. This isn't about spectacle alone. It's about persistence. About what happens between the explosions, in the quiet aftermath where characters have to live with what they've done. That tone, gritty, reflective, maybe even slightly cynical, doesn't happen by accident. It comes from a filmmaker with a very specific lens on the world. The creative force behind this project is Paul Thomas Anderson, a director who has built his career on dissecting human obsession, power, and emotional fracture. From There Will Be Blood to Phantom Thread, Anderson doesn't just tell stories, he studies people under pressure. And that's exactly why One Battle After feels like a natural evolution rather than a departure. War, conflict, resistance. These are just external expressions of the same internal struggles he's always explored. Control, identity, the cost of ambition. Anderson's filmmaking style has always walked this fascinating line between precision and chaos. His camera moves with intention, yet his characters often feel like they're barely holding themselves together. That tension becomes the heartbeat of his films. In this case, early indications suggest he's channeling that energy into something more expansive, possibly political, possibly historical, but still deeply personal. Because no matter how large the canvas gets, Anderson never loses sight of the individual caught inside it. What pulled him into this project appears rooted in theme rather than genre. This isn't a traditional war film, at least not in the way audiences might expect. It leans more toward a character-driven exploration of conflict, how battles shape people long after they're over. Think less about front lines and more about aftermath. Less about victory and more about consequence. That distinction matters because it reframes everything. The action becomes secondary. The psychology takes center stage. Anderson has always been drawn to morally complex characters, people who don't fit cleanly into hero or villain categories. That fascination likely plays a central role here. A title like One Battle After Another implies repetition, maybe even futility. It raises a question. Are these battles leading somewhere, or are they simply cycles that trap the characters in place? That kind of existential undercurrent is pure Anderson territory. He thrives in ambiguity, in spaces where answers feel just out of reach. Another crucial aspect of his vision is collaboration. While Anderson is often labeled an auteur, and rightly so, his films are built through deeply trusted creative partnerships. He tends to work repeatedly with the same actors and crew, creating a kind of artistic shorthand that allows for more nuanced storytelling. That familiarity often translates into performances and visuals that feel unusually intimate. Even when the scale is large, it's less about control and more about trust, letting the film evolve organically within a clear framework. The backing of a major studio for a project like this signals something important. Studios don't typically hand over significant resources to directors unless there's confidence, not just in commercial viability, but in artistic clarity. Anderson has earned that trust over decades. His films may not always be conventional box office juggernauts, but they carry cultural weight. They linger. They spark conversation. And that's a different kind of value that studios increasingly recognize in an era dominated by formula. Visually and thematically, Anderson seems poised to blend intimacy with scale in a way that could redefine expectations for this kind of story. If his past work is any indication, every frame will carry intention. Every character choice will ripple outward, and the battles, whatever form they take, will matter less for their outcome and more for what they reveal about the people fighting them. Because that's the core of Anderson's vision, not the battle itself, the cost of it. And that cost doesn't start on set or on screen, it starts on the page. Because before any of this could be filmed, before actors stepped into these roles, someone had to figure out how to structure a story built on repetition, consequence, and emotional residue. And that process? Far messier than you might think. The story behind One Battle After Another doesn't begin with explosions or set pieces. It begins with structure, and not the kind that comes easily. Because how do you write a narrative that, by its very title, suggests repetition, conflict after conflict, no clear endpoint, no obvious resolution? That's a screenwriting challenge that can collapse under its own weight if handled poorly. But in the hands of Paul Thomas Anderson, structure isn't a limitation, it's a playground. What makes Anderson's approach to storytelling so compelling is his resistance to traditional narrative comfort. He's never been interested in clean three-act arcs where everything ties up neatly. Instead, his scripts tend to unfold like lived experiences. Messy, unpredictable, sometimes frustratingly ambiguous. And that sensibility feels baked into One Battle After Another. The writing doesn't aim to guide you gently from point A to point B. It pulls you through emotional terrain that shifts under your feet. At its core, this appears to be an original screenplay rather than a direct adaptation, though Anderson has often drawn loose inspiration from literary sources in the past. That matters because original scripts give him room to experiment structurally. There's no blueprint to follow, no expectations to meet, just an idea, and the discipline to shape it into something coherent without losing its rawness. That balance between chaos and control is where his writing thrives. One of the most fascinating aspects of Anderson's scripts is how they handle time. He doesn't always move forward in a straight line. Scenes linger longer than expected. Moments overlap. Characters drift in and out of focus. That fluidity can make the narrative feel almost hypnotic, but it also demands more from the audience. You're not just watching, you're actively piecing things together. And in a story built around cycles of conflict, that fragmented sense of time could become a defining feature. Dialogue plays a crucial role here. Anderson writes conversations that feel both hyper-real and slightly heightened, like reality filtered through emotional intensity. Characters don't just exchange information. They circle each other, probe, deflect, reveal truths accidentally. You can imagine One Battle After Another using dialogue not as exposition, but as battlegrounds of its own. Verbal confrontations mirroring physical ones. Words carrying as much weight as action. But here's where things get interesting, the challenge of escalation. In most films, each conflict builds toward a larger, more explosive climax. But when your premise is one battle after another, escalation becomes tricky. How do you keep raising stakes without exhausting the audience? Anderson's likely solution isn't bigger battles, it's deeper ones. The conflicts may become more internal, more psychological, less about scale, more about consequence. That shift keeps the story from feeling repetitive, even as it embraces repetition. There's also the question of perspective. Whose story is this, really? Anderson often centers his narratives around singular, complex protagonists, but he's equally skilled at weaving ensemble dynamics where multiple viewpoints collide. If this film leans toward the latter, the script might use different characters to explore different battles, each one reflecting a unique response to the same overarching conflict. That multiplicity can create a richer, more layered narrative without losing cohesion. And then there's revision, the invisible part of screenwriting that shapes everything. Anderson is known for refining his scripts extensively, sometimes even during production. Scenes evolve. Dialogue shifts. Entire sequences can be reimagined based on what feels true in the moment. That flexibility allows the story to breathe, but it also means the final film is often a living document of creative decisions made in real time. What emerges from all this is a screenplay that likely resists easy categorization. It's not just a war story, not just a character study. It exists somewhere in between, using structure as a reflection of theme. Repetition isn't just a narrative device, it's the point. The audience isn't meant to escape the cycle. They're meant to feel it. And that feeling, the weight of repeated conflict, the slow accumulation of consequence, only works if the right actors step into these roles. Because a script like this demands performers who can carry nuance, who can communicate exhaustion, resilience, and contradiction without relying on spectacle. And finding those actors? That's its own kind of battle. Casting a film like One Battle After Another isn't just about star power, it's about emotional endurance. You're not looking for actors who can simply perform in isolated moments. You need people who can carry accumulation. Characters who feel like they've lived through multiple lifetimes by the time the credits roll. And that kind of casting requires a director who knows exactly what each face, each voice, each presence brings to the screen. Fortunately, Paul Thomas Anderson has built a career on precisely that instinct. Anderson doesn't cast randomly. He curates. There's always a sense that every actor is chosen not just for the role, but for what they represent within the film's larger emotional ecosystem. His collaborations tend to repeat for a reason. He understands how certain performers operate, how they think, how they surprise. That familiarity creates a foundation where risk becomes possible. And a project like this demands risk. At the center of the film is Leonardo DiCaprio, and that choice alone tells you a lot about the direction of the story. DiCaprio isn't just a movie star. He's an actor who thrives in roles defined by obsession, moral conflict, and psychological unraveling. From There Will Be Blood-adjacent intensity in The Revenant to the manic energy of The Wolf of Wall Street, he brings a kind of controlled volatility. That's crucial here. A narrative built on repeated battles needs a lead who can evolve visibly, who can show the wear and tear of each conflict without losing the audience's connection. What makes this casting particularly compelling is that DiCaprio has never worked with Anderson before. That absence of prior collaboration adds an element of unpredictability. There's no established rhythm between them, no creative shorthand, and that can be a good thing. It forces both director and actor to push each other, to find new ground rather than relying on familiar patterns. Sometimes the best performances come from that tension, but a film like this doesn't survive on a single performance. It needs an ensemble that feels interconnected, almost symbiotic. Early casting signals suggest a mix of seasoned veterans and unexpected choices, something Anderson has always excelled at. He loves placing actors against type, giving them roles that challenge audience expectations. When that works, it doesn't just surprise, it deepens the narrative. You're watching not just a character, but an actor redefining themselves in real time. Chemistry becomes the invisible thread holding everything together. And here's the thing. Chemistry isn't something you can manufacture on set. It's discovered during casting, through screen tests, rehearsals, even informal conversations. Anderson is known for investing heavily in this process, ensuring that relationships feel authentic before cameras ever roll. In a story driven by conflict, those relationships need to feel layered. Allies who don't fully trust each other, enemies who share uncomfortable similarities, bonds that shift as the narrative progresses. There's also a strategic intelligence behind balancing star power with lesser-known talent. Big names draw audiences, but fresh faces bring unpredictability. They don't carry the weight of previous roles, which allows viewers to engage with them more purely. Anderson often uses this contrast to his advantage, placing established actors alongside newcomers to create a dynamic where no performance feels entirely safe or predictable. Another fascinating aspect is how casting interacts with theme. If the film is about cycles of conflict, about the toll of repeated battles, then the actors themselves need to embody that idea. Not just physically, but emotionally. You're looking for performers who can convey fatigue without losing intensity, who can show resilience without slipping into cliché. That's a narrow line to walk, and it requires a very specific kind of talent. And then there's the practical side, the scheduling, the negotiations, the logistics of bringing all these actors together. For a project of this scale, aligning availability alone can feel like solving a puzzle. But when it works, when everything clicks into place, you get something rare. A cast that doesn't just perform the story, but becomes inseparable from it. Because ultimately, casting isn't about filling roles. It's about building a living, breathing system of human energy that the camera can capture. And in one battle after another, that system needs to feel constantly in motion, shifting, colliding, evolving with every new conflict. And once those actors step into the frame, once they start inhabiting these roles, the real test begins. Because casting sets the potential, but performance is where that potential either ignites or disappears. There's always a moment in a performance where acting disappears. You stop seeing technique, stop noticing choices, and suddenly, it just feels real. That's the standard one battle after another demands from its lead, and it's exactly the space Leonardo DiCaprio has built his career chasing. Not perfection. Truth under pressure. What makes DiCaprio such a compelling presence here isn't just his intensity, it's his ability to layer that intensity over time. This isn't a character defined by a single emotional arc, it's erosion. Each conflict chips away at him, reshaping who he is scene by scene. Early in the film, you can imagine a kind of controlled confidence, someone who believes they understand the rules of the game. But as the battles accumulate, that certainty fractures, not all at once, gradually, subtly, and that's where DiCaprio thrives in the slow unraveling. Watch how he uses stillness. That's always been one of his most underrated tools. In quieter moments, when dialogue drops away, his face does the work. Micro-expressions, hesitation, the flicker of doubt before a decision. These are the details that transform a character from written concept into lived experience. And in a film built on repetition, those small shifts become everything. Because the audience needs to feel that each battle leaves a mark. Physically, there's likely a transformation happening as well. Not necessarily dramatic in the traditional sense, but cumulative. Posture changes. Movement slows or sharpens depending on the character's state of mind. Fatigue sets in, not just as a visual cue, but as a rhythm. The way he walks into a room in the first act won't be the way he enters in the final stretch. That evolution is storytelling without words. But here's where it gets interesting. DiCaprio's performances often carry a kind of volatility, a sense that something could snap at any moment. In this film, that volatility might be restrained, redirected inward. Instead of explosive outbursts, you get controlled tension, pressure building beneath the surface. And when it does break, it matters, because it's been earned. There are likely key scenes, moments where everything converges. Not necessarily the loudest or most action-driven sequences, but the ones where the character is forced to confront the cumulative weight of everything that's come before. These are the scenes that define performances, where the actor has to balance history, emotion, and immediacy all at once. And if DiCaprio lands those moments, and history suggests he will, they become the anchors of the entire film. Chemistry also plays a crucial role here. A performance doesn't exist in isolation, it's shaped by the people around it. The way DiCaprio listens, reacts, adapts to other actors creates a dynamic that feels alive rather than staged. Conflict scenes, in particular, rely on this interplay. It's not just about delivering lines, it's about responding in real time, allowing the tension between characters to dictate the rhythm of the scene. There's also an interesting comparison to be made with DiCaprio's past work. He's played characters driven by ambition, survival, obsession. But this feels different, less about achieving something, more about enduring something. That shift changes the energy of the performance. It's not forward momentum, it's resistance, holding on. And that requires a different kind of control. What elevates a performance like this is the ability to make internal conflict visible, to externalize thought without overplaying it. That's a delicate balance, and it's where great actors separate themselves from good ones. DiCaprio has reached a point in his career where he understands that less can often say more. A glance can carry more weight than a monologue if it's grounded in truth. And when everything aligns, the writing, the direction, the performance, you get something rare. A character who doesn't just exist within the film, but lingers beyond it. Someone whose struggles feel familiar, even if their circumstances are extreme. That's the goal. Not just to impress, but to resonate. But even the strongest lead performance needs support. It needs other voices, other energies, other perspectives to push against. Because no matter how compelling one character is, a story built on conflict demands a world full of equally compelling people. And that's where the ensemble steps in, quietly, powerfully, and sometimes unexpectedly stealing the spotlight. A great ensemble doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself slowly, scene by scene, interaction by interaction, until you realize the film isn't resting on one performance, but on a network of them. That's exactly the kind of ecosystem one battle after another seems to build. And it's where Paul Thomas Anderson quietly does some of his most impressive work. Because while audiences often walk in for the lead, they stay for the world. And that world only feels real if every supporting character carries weight. Take Sean Penn, for instance, an actor who doesn't just occupy scenes, he disrupts them. Penn brings a kind of unpredictability that's hard to replicate. There's always a sense that his character exists beyond the frame, that they have histories the script only hints at. In a film centered on cycles of conflict, that presence becomes invaluable. He doesn't need extended screen time to leave an imprint. A single look, a line delivered with just the right edge, and suddenly the emotional temperature of the scene shifts. Then there's Regina Hall, whose casting adds a completely different energy. Hall has spent years balancing sharp comedic timing with increasingly nuanced dramatic work, and that duality can be a powerful tool here. In a story heavy with tension, she can bring moments of grounding, whether through warmth, restraint, or unexpected emotional depth. And when she leans into drama, there's a quiet precision to her performances that often catches audiences off guard. She doesn't overplay, she lets scenes breathe. What makes Anderson's ensembles so effective is how they're structured. Not hierarchically, but relationally. Every character exists in response to someone else. Power dynamics shift constantly. A supporting role in one scene can feel like the emotional center in another. That fluidity keeps the film alive, constantly evolving rather than settling into predictable rhythms. And here's where the magic really happens. Intersections. The moments where these actors collide on screen. Not just in obvious confrontations, but in subtler exchanges. A conversation that starts casually and slowly tightens. A shared silence that says more than dialogue ever could. These are the moments where ensemble chemistry reveals itself, where you feel the actors listening, reacting, adjusting in real time. There's also something to be said about contrast. Anderson often places vastly different acting styles side by side. Intensity against restraint, theatricality against naturalism. That contrast doesn't clash. It creates texture. It makes the world feel more authentic, because real people don't all operate on the same emotional frequency. In one battle after another, that variety likely mirrors the film's thematic core. different responses to the same ongoing conflict. Breakout performances tend to emerge in these environments. Actors who may not be household names suddenly find space to shine, precisely because the film doesn't treat them as secondary. Every role matters. Every perspective adds a layer. And when those smaller performances hit, they often linger just as much as the leads. Another subtle strength of Anderson's ensemble work is restraint. Not every character is given a dramatic monologue or a show-stopping moment. Some are defined by absence, by what they don't say, by the space they leave behind. That kind of storytelling requires trust in the actors, in the audience, in the material itself. And then there's the emotional rhythm of the group. In a film built around repeated battles, the ensemble becomes a way to track impact. You see how different characters absorb, deflect, or amplify the consequences of those conflicts. Some harden, some break, some adapt in ways that feel almost unrecognizable from where they started. That variation keeps the narrative from feeling repetitive, even as it revisits similar themes. By the time the film reaches its later stages, the ensemble doesn't feel like a collection of performances. It feels like a lived-in world, one where every interaction carries history, where every glance suggests something unsaid. And that's when the film truly locks in. When you stop analyzing who's doing what and just feel the weight of everything happening on screen. But performances don't exist in a vacuum. They're shaped by the spaces they inhabit, the rooms, the landscapes, the textures that surround them. Because a character walking through an empty set is just that, an actor on a stage. It's the world around them that turns movement into meaning. And in a film like this, that world isn't just background, it's storytelling. The world of one battle after another doesn't just exist. It presses in on the characters. You feel it in the walls, in the landscapes, in the textures that seem to carry history long before the story begins. And that kind of immersive environment doesn't happen by accident. It's the result of deliberate, meticulous production design guided by a director like Paul Thomas Anderson, who understands that setting isn't background. It's psychology made visible. What stands out immediately is the likely commitment to practical design. Anderson has never been a filmmaker who leans heavily on artificial environments when real ones can tell richer stories. Rooms feel lived in, not decorated. Streets feel used, not staged. There's an authenticity to the spaces that allows actors to interact with them naturally, which in turn makes performances more grounded. You're not watching characters move through sets. You're watching people navigate environments that shape their behavior. Color plays a crucial role here. Anderson's films often use restrained palettes, but with intentional variation that signals emotional shifts. You can imagine one battle after another, leaning into earth tones, muted shades, environments that feel worn rather than vibrant. And then, at key moments, something changes. A sharper contrast, a colder hue, a sudden intrusion of color that disrupts the visual rhythm. Those choices aren't decorative. They're narrative signals, guiding the audience's emotional response without announcing themselves. Costume design follows a similar philosophy. Characters don't just wear clothes. They wear history. Fabric choices, wear and tear, subtle details like how something fits or doesn't fit anymore. All of it tells a story. In a film centered on repeated conflict, costumes likely evolve alongside the characters. Cleaner lines at the beginning, gradually giving way to something more weathered, more functional, less concerned with appearance, and more with survival. It's transformation you don't always notice consciously, but you feel it. Location selection becomes another layer of storytelling. Anderson tends to choose places that carry inherent texture, whether it's sprawling landscapes or confined interiors. Wide spaces can emphasize isolation, making characters feel small against their surroundings. Tight, enclosed spaces can do the opposite, compressing tension, forcing interactions that might otherwise be avoided. The contrast between these environments creates a visual rhythm that mirrors the emotional ebb and flow of the narrative. Props, often overlooked, become silent storytellers. Objects placed within a scene aren't random. They're chosen, positioned, and sometimes revisited. A recurring item can gain meaning simply through repetition, echoing the film's central theme. A tool, a photograph, a piece of equipment. Whatever it is, it accumulates significance the more it appears. By the time it shows up again later in the film, it's no longer just an object. It's memory. It's consequence. One of Anderson's greatest strengths is layering. Backgrounds aren't empty. They're alive with detail. Extras moving through spaces, subtle actions happening outside the main focus, environmental elements that suggest a world continuing beyond the immediate scene. That density makes the film feel expansive, even when the camera is focused tightly on a character. There's always more happening than what you're directly watching. There's also a tactile quality to his production design. You can almost feel the surfaces: raw wood, cold metal, fabric worn thin over time. That sensory detail matters because it grounds the story. It reminds you that these characters exist in a physical world with weight and texture, and in a narrative built on conflict, that physicality reinforces the stakes. Every action has consequence. Every environment leaves a mark. What's particularly compelling is how design interacts with theme. If the film is about cycles, about one battle leading into another, then the world itself might reflect that repetition. Similar spaces appearing in different contexts. Locations revisited, but altered by what's happened there. Visual echoes that reinforce the idea that nothing truly resets. Everything accumulates. And by the time the audience becomes fully aware of these details, it's too late. They're already immersed. The design has done its job quietly, shaping perception without demanding attention. That's the highest level of craft, when you don't notice it consciously, but you'd feel its absence immediately if it were gone. But as powerful as these environments are, they're only half the equation, because how those spaces are captured, how light moves through them, how the camera frames them, how motion is controlled or unleashed. That's what transforms design into cinema. And that's where the lens takes over, turning physical space into visual language. There's a moment in every visually driven film where you stop following the story and start feeling it through images alone. No dialogue needed. Just light, movement, composition. That's the space one battle after another seems designed to occupy, and it's where Paul Thomas Anderson traditionally elevates his work from compelling to unforgettable. Because for him, cinematography isn't decoration, it's narrative. Anderson has long collaborated with cinematographers who understand that the camera isn't just recording action, it's interpreting it. Every lens choice, every frame, every movement carries intention. You can expect this film to continue that philosophy, blending precision with a kind of organic fluidity that makes even controlled shots feel alive. The camera doesn't just observe characters, it tracks their emotional state, sometimes even anticipating it. Framing becomes one of the film's most powerful tools. Anderson often composes shots that isolate characters within their environment, even when they're surrounded by others. A figure placed slightly off-center, negative space swallowing half the frame. It creates a quiet unease, a sense that something is always just out of balance. In a story built around repeated conflict, that imbalance becomes visual shorthand for instability. The world never quite settles. Lens selection plays a subtle but critical role. Wider lenses can place characters within their environment, emphasizing how small they are compared to the forces around them. Tighter lenses, on the other hand, compress space, trapping characters within the frame. You feel the pressure, the lack of escape. Anderson often shifts between these approaches depending on the emotional needs of the scene, creating a visual rhythm that mirrors the narrative's ebb and flow. Lighting, though, that's where things get really interesting. Anderson has a deep appreciation for naturalistic lighting, often using practical sources within the scene, lamps, windows, firelight, to create atmosphere. But natural doesn't mean accidental. It's carefully sculpted to guide the eye, to highlight certain details while obscuring others. Shadows aren't just absence of light, they're part of the composition. They hide, they reveal, they create tension. Think about how light can change meaning. A character standing in soft, diffused light early in the film might later be framed in harsh, directional shadows. Same person, different context. The visual language tells you something has shifted internally, even if the script doesn't spell it out. That's the kind of storytelling Anderson leans into, subtle, but deliberate. Camera movement adds another layer. Anderson is known for his use of long tracking shots, fluid, almost hypnotic sequences where the camera glides through space alongside the characters. These shots do more than look impressive. They immerse you. They place you within the environment, moving through it as the characters do. In a film about ongoing conflict, that movement can create a sense of inevitability. You're not jumping between moments, you're being carried through them. But he's equally effective when he chooses stillness. A locked-off shot, held just a second longer than expected, can create discomfort. It forces you to sit with the moment, to absorb what's happening without distraction. That contrast between movement and stillness becomes a kind of visual punctuation. It controls pacing without relying on editing alone. Speaking of pacing, shot duration plays a huge role in how the film feels. Longer takes allow tension to build organically, giving actors space to inhabit their performances fully. Shorter, sharper cuts can inject urgency when needed. Anderson tends to favor patience, letting scenes breathe rather than rushing through them. That patience can be demanding, but it's also where the film finds its depth. There's also the question of visual motifs, recurring images or compositions that reinforce the film's themes. In a story centered on cycles, you might see repeated framing patterns, similar shots appearing in different contexts, visual echoes that subtly remind you that the characters are caught in something ongoing, something they can't easily escape. These motifs aren't always obvious on first viewing, but they linger. They connect the film's moments into something cohesive. And then there's texture, the way the image itself feels. Film grain versus digital clarity. Sharpness versus softness. Anderson has experimented with both formats, and each choice carries implications. Grain can add a sense of imperfection, of history. Clean digital images can feel immediate, almost clinical. The decision isn't just technical, it's thematic. By the time all these elements come together, framing, lighting, movement, texture, you're no longer just watching a story. You're experiencing it visually, emotionally, almost physically. The cinematography becomes the language through which everything else communicates. But even the most powerful images need something to resonate against. Because what you see is only part of the experience. What you hear, music, silence, the subtle details of sound, that's what turns images into memory. And in a film like this, the audio doesn't just support the visuals. It completes them. Sound in one battle after another isn't just something you hear. It's something that presses on you. The kind of audio design that doesn't politely sit in the background but seeps into the experience, shaping how every moment lands. And with Paul Thomas Anderson, sound has always been more than accompaniment. It's emotional architecture. Anderson's collaborations with composer Johnny Greenwood have produced some of the most distinctive film scores of the last 2 decades. Greenwood doesn't write music that tells you what to feel. He writes music that unsettles you into feeling something. Strings that don't resolve, rhythms that feel slightly off, melodies that hover just outside of comfort. That approach fits perfectly with a story built on cycles of conflict, where resolution is never quite complete. The score here likely avoids traditional heroic themes, no swelling orchestral triumphs signaling victory. Instead, think tension stretched thin, notes that linger longer than expected, silence used as punctuation rather than absence. Because in a film about repeated battles, music can't simply rise and fall. It has to accumulate, just like the story itself. And here's where Greenwood's genius really shows: repetition with variation. A musical motif might appear early, subtle, and almost unnoticeable. Then it returns, slightly altered, darker, more distorted. By the time it shows up again later in the film, it carries weight. Not because it's louder, but because of everything that's happened since you first heard it. Sound becomes memory, but the score is only half the equation. Sound design, the raw tactile layer of audio, does just as much heavy lifting. Footsteps on different surfaces, the distant hum of machinery, wind cutting through open spaces. These details ground the film in physical reality, making every environment feel alive. And in moments of tension, those sounds can become almost oppressive, amplified, isolated, turning ordinary noise into something unsettling. Silence, though, that's the real weapon. Anderson understands that removing sound can be more powerful than adding it. A sudden drop into quiet forces the audience to lean in, to become hyper-aware of what's happening on screen. It creates space for performances to breathe, for emotion to land without interference, and when sound does return, it hits harder because of that contrast. There's also a fascinating interplay between diegetic and non-diegetic sound, the difference between audio that exists within the world of the film and music that exists outside it. Anderson often blurs that line. A piece of music might start as part of the environment, a radio playing in the background, and then subtly transform into score. Or the opposite. That transition creates a seamless connection between the character's world and the audience's emotional experience. Dialogue, too, is treated with precision, not overly polished, not artificially clean. There's texture in the way people speak, overlapping lines, imperfect delivery, moments where words trail off or collide. It feels lived in, like real conversation shaped by tension rather than scripted clarity. And in a film driven by conflict, that messiness becomes part of the authenticity. One of the most effective techniques Anderson employs is layering. Multiple sound elements existing simultaneously, each contributing to the overall atmosphere. Music, ambient noise, dialogue, subtle background details. All woven together so that no single element dominates unless it needs to. That balance creates immersion. You're not just hearing the film, you're inside it. And then there are those moments where everything aligns. Image, performance, sound, music, all hitting the same emotional frequency. These are the scenes that stay with you, not because they're loud or flashy, but because they resonate. You feel them in your chest, not just your ears. What's particularly compelling about the audio landscape in One Battle After Another is how it mirrors the film's themes. Just like the narrative, the sound doesn't reset between moments. It carries forward. Echoes of previous scenes linger, sometimes literally, sometimes emotionally. A sound you heard earlier might return in a completely different context, recontextualizing what it meant the first time. By the end, the audio doesn't just support the story. It becomes inseparable from it. You can't imagine the film without those sonic choices because they're part of how the story is told. But while sound and image create the experience we see and hear, there's an entire world behind the camera that shapes how those elements come together. The controlled chaos of production, the unexpected challenges, the moments where everything almost falls apart and somehow comes back stronger. Because making a film like this, it's its own series of battles. Film sets are controlled chaos. That's the truth no polished behind-the-scenes featurette ever fully captures. And for a project like One Battle After Another, that chaos wasn't just logistical, it was thematic. Because when your story is about enduring conflict, the production itself often starts to mirror that struggle in unexpected ways. Under the direction of Paul Thomas Anderson, though, chaos isn't something to eliminate, it's something to shape. Shooting a film of this scale likely required a demanding schedule, multiple locations, shifting environments, sequences that needed both precision and flexibility. Anderson isn't a director who rushes through setups just to stay on schedule. He lingers. He adjusts. He waits for the moment when a scene feels right rather than simply looks right. That approach can stretch production timelines, but it also creates space for something more organic to emerge. Weather alone can become an unpredictable adversary. Outdoor shoots, especially in environments meant to feel raw and lived in, don't always cooperate. Rain arrives when you don't want it. Light disappears faster than expected. Conditions shift between takes. But here's the thing, Anderson has a history of embracing those disruptions. Instead of fighting them, he often folds them into the film's texture. A sudden change in atmosphere becomes part of the story rather than a problem to solve. Then there's the human element. A set filled with actors like Leonardo DiCaprio and Sean Penn isn't just a workplace. It's a collision of creative energies. Both are known for their intensity, their commitment to digging deep into character. That can lead to electric performances, but it also requires careful navigation. Anderson's role here isn't just director. It's mediator, guide, sometimes even translator between different acting approaches. Improvisation likely played a key role during filming. Anderson has always allowed room for actors to explore within scenes, to push beyond the script when something feels authentic. That openness can lead to unexpected moments, the kind that feel too real to have been planned. A line delivered differently, a reaction that wasn't anticipated. These happy accidents often become the most memorable parts of a film because they carry a sense of spontaneity that scripted moments sometimes lack. Of course, not everything goes smoothly. Technical challenges are inevitable. Complex camera movements require multiple takes. Sound issues disrupt otherwise perfect performances. Equipment fails at the worst possible moments. These aren't glamorous problems, but they're part of the process. And how a production responds to them often defines the final result. Anderson's patience becomes crucial here. His willingness to reset, rethink, and try again until the scene achieves the emotional truth he's chasing. There's also the physical toll. Long shooting days, demanding scenes, emotional intensity, it all adds up. Actors aren't just performing. They're sustaining that performance over weeks, sometimes months. In a film centered on exhaustion and resilience, that real-world fatigue can bleed into the work in ways that actually enhance authenticity. The line between performance and lived experience starts to blur. One of the most fascinating aspects of Anderson's productions is how fluid they can be. Scenes aren't always locked in place. Adjustments happen on the fly. Entire sequences can shift based on what's discovered during filming. That flexibility requires trust from the cast, from the crew, from the studio backing the project. It's a risk, but it's also what allows the film to evolve into something more than what was originally planned. Reshoots, often seen as a sign of trouble in other productions, take on a different meaning here. For Anderson, revisiting material isn't about fixing mistakes. It's about refining intention, finding clearer emotional beats, strengthening connections between scenes. It's part of the creative process, not a deviation from it. And then there are the quieter moments behind the scenes, the ones that never make headlines. Cast members bonding between takes, crew members solving problems in real time, small decisions that ripple outward into the final film. These moments don't show up directly on screen, but they shape the environment in which the film is made. And that environment influences everything. By the time production wraps, what you have isn't just a collection of filmed scenes. It's a record of a journey, of challenges faced, solutions found, and countless decisions layered on top of each other. The film becomes a product of that process, carrying traces of everything that happened along the way. But once the cameras stop rolling, a different kind of battle begins. One fought not on set, but in the marketplace. Because no matter how artistically ambitious a film is, it still has to find its audience. And that's where numbers start telling their own story. Numbers can be deceptive. They look clean, definitive, budget, opening weekend, total gross, but they rarely tell the whole story. And for a film like One Battle After Another, the commercial narrative is likely far more nuanced than a simple hit or flop label. Because when Paul Thomas Anderson steps into a large-scale project with a star like Leonardo DiCaprio, expectations shift. This isn't just about profitability, it's about positioning. Let's start with the budget. While exact figures haven't been officially confirmed, industry estimates suggest a substantial investment, likely in the range of a mid to high-tier studio production. That alone marks a significant moment in Anderson's career. He's traditionally worked within controlled budgets, crafting intimate films with expansive ideas. Scaling up financially introduces new pressures. Higher budgets mean higher expectations, not just creatively, but commercially. Opening weekend becomes the first real test. And here's where things get interesting. Films like this don't always explode out of the gate the way franchise blockbusters do. Instead, they often rely on a different trajectory. Strong initial curiosity driven by star power and director reputation, followed by word of mouth that determines longevity. If audiences connect, the film holds. If not, it drops quickly. That second weekend becomes just as important as the first. International markets play a crucial role as well. DiCaprio's global appeal can significantly boost overseas performance, sometimes even outweighing domestic numbers. Territories like Europe and parts of Asia tend to respond strongly to auteur-driven cinema, especially when paired with recognizable stars. That global reach can transform a modest domestic performance into a solid overall result. But raw box office isn't the only metric anymore. Streaming rights, digital rentals, and post-theatrical distribution have become major components of a film's financial life. A movie that performs moderately in theaters can find a second life online, reaching audiences who might have skipped the theatrical experience. For a film with layered storytelling and strong performances, that long-tail engagement can be particularly valuable. There's also the question of expectations versus reality. A $200 million blockbuster needs massive returns to be considered successful. A film like this operates in a different space. Profitability thresholds are lower, but so is the margin for misinterpretation. If audiences expect a high-energy action film and instead get a slow-burning character study, reception can become complicated even if the film delivers exactly what it set out to do. Marketing plays a huge role in shaping those expectations. Trailers, posters, promotional interviews, all of it frames how the audience approaches the film. Lean too heavily into action, and you risk misleading viewers. Lean too heavily into artistry, and you might limit broader appeal. Finding that balance is its own strategic challenge, one that can directly impact box office performance. Then there's the concept of legs, how well a film sustains its earnings over time. Some movies open big and fade quickly. Others build momentum gradually, gaining traction as audiences recommend them to others. Anderson's films often fall into the latter category. They invite discussion, they linger, and that kind of engagement can translate into steady, if not explosive, financial performance. Award season can also influence commercial success. Even nominations can boost visibility, drawing in audiences who might have overlooked the film initially. For a project with strong performances and technical craftsmanship, awards recognition isn't just possible, it's expected. And that recognition can extend the film's theatrical run, adding to its overall earnings. Ultimately, the commercial impact of one battle after another won't be defined by a single number. It will be measured by a combination of factors: box office, critical response, cultural conversation, long-term relevance. Because some films don't just make money. They build reputation. They become part of the director's legacy, part of the broader cinematic landscape. And that brings us to the next layer of the story: how the world reacts once the film is out there. Critics, audiences, debates, disagreements. Because no matter how carefully crafted a film is, once it leaves the hands of its creators, it belongs to everyone else. And everyone has an opinion. The most fascinating thing about how one battle after another lands with critics is that it almost certainly refuses easy consensus. That's been the pattern with Paul Thomas Anderson for years now. His films don't just get reviewed, they get argued over. And that's exactly what elevates a release from being merely watched to being discussed. Early critical reactions tend to orbit around one central tension: ambition versus accessibility. On one side, you have critics who respond to Anderson's uncompromising vision, the layered storytelling, the refusal to simplify character motivations, the patience in pacing. For them, this is cinema operating at a high level, not designed to please immediately, but to unfold over time. The kind of film that improves in your mind after you leave the theater. Then there's the other side, the viewers and critics who find that same ambition distancing. The pacing feels slow. The structure feels fragmented. The repetition that defines the film's theme can, depending on your tolerance, start to feel like narrative stagnation. And here's the key: both reactions are valid. This isn't a film built for universal approval. It's built for engagement. Aggregated scores, whether from Rotten Tomatoes, Metacritic, or IMDb, would likely reflect that divide. Strong overall ratings, but with noticeable variation in individual reviews. You might see critics praising Leonardo DiCaprio's performance as one of his most controlled and mature, while others question whether the film gives him enough narrative propulsion. Same performance, different expectations, and that's where the cultural conversation begins to expand beyond numbers. Because films like this don't live or die by consensus. They thrive on interpretation. One viewer sees a meditation on the futility of conflict. Another sees a character study about endurance. Someone else reads it as a quiet political statement. The film doesn't force a single meaning. It invites multiple ones. And that openness becomes part of its identity. Social media, for better or worse, amplifies that divide. Clips circulate. Scenes get dissected. Certain moments become talking points, not always the ones you'd expect. A quiet exchange between characters might spark more conversation than a large-scale sequence, simply because it leaves room for interpretation. That's the kind of film this is. It doesn't hand you answers. It gives you material to debate. Awards season adds another layer. Performances, especially DiCaprio's, are likely to dominate discussions. Not because they're flashy, but because they're restrained. And restraint, when done well, tends to resonate with critics. Technical categories come into play as well. Cinematography, score, production design. Anderson's films consistently perform well in these areas because the craftsmanship is undeniable, even for those who may not fully connect with the narrative. But perhaps the most interesting aspect of the film's reception is how it evolves over time. Initial reactions often focus on expectations, what people thought the film would be versus what it actually is. But as that expectation gap fades, a different kind of appreciation can emerge. Viewers revisit it, reinterpret it. Notice details they missed the first time. That's when a film starts to shift from divisive to enduring. There's also the question of audience versus critic alignment. Anderson's work sometimes creates a gap between the two, critics leaning more positive, general audiences more mixed. But when that gap narrows, when both groups find common ground, it signals something special. Not universal agreement, but shared recognition of value. And here's the thing, controversy, in this context, isn't a weakness. It's a sign that the film is doing something active. It's challenging viewers, pushing them out of passive consumption and into participation. You don't just watch it, you respond to it. By the time the conversation settles, the film's reputation isn't defined by its opening reviews. It's defined by its staying power. How often it's revisited. How frequently it's referenced. How deeply it embeds itself into discussions about cinema in that year and beyond. Because critical reception is only the beginning. The real question is what the film means, not just in terms of story, but in terms of theme, legacy, and impact. And that's where everything comes together, every creative decision, every performance, every visual and sonic choice, into something larger than the sum of its parts, something that lasts. What one battle after another ultimately leaves behind isn't a single message. It's a lingering question. Not about who won or lost, not about which battle mattered most, but about whether any of it truly ends. That's the quiet provocation running through Paul Thomas Anderson's vision. Conflict here isn't an event. It's a condition. At its core, the film explores endurance. Not the triumphant, heroic kind we're used to seeing, but the quieter, more uncomfortable version. The kind where survival itself becomes the goal. Leonardo DiCaprio's character doesn't move toward resolution in a traditional sense. He accumulates experience, damage, understanding, and by the end, you're left questioning whether growth has actually occurred or whether he's simply adapted to an unchanging cycle. That idea, cycles without closure, threads through every layer of the film. The narrative structure reinforces it. The visual motifs echo it. Even the sound design carries it forward, with recurring tones and patterns that never fully resolve. It's not subtle, but it doesn't need to be. The repetition isn't there to be hidden. It's there to be felt, to create a kind of emotional fatigue that mirrors what the characters experience. There's also a deeper thematic current running beneath the surface, the illusion of control. Characters believe they're making choices, steering outcomes, shaping their paths. But the film quietly undermines that belief. Each decision leads not to resolution, but to another conflict, another battle. It raises an uncomfortable possibility that agency might be more limited than we'd like to think, that we're reacting as much as we're acting, and yet the film doesn't slip into nihilism. That's the surprising part. Despite its cyclical structure, despite its refusal to offer clean resolution, there's a thread of resilience running through it. Not hope in the traditional sense, but persistence. The idea that continuing, enduring, adapting, surviving has its own kind of meaning, even if the larger system never changes. Visually, those themes are reinforced through repetition and variation, spaces revisited, framing echoed, moments that feel familiar but slightly altered. It creates a sense that time is moving, but not progressing in a straight line. More like a spiral, circling the same ideas, but from slightly different angles each time. That structure invites rewatching, because the film isn't designed to be fully understood in a single pass. Within Paul Thomas Anderson's filmography, this project feels like both a continuation and a shift. The obsession, the character-driven intensity, the ambiguity, they're all here. But the scale is different, the canvas is broader. And yet, he never loses sight of the individual within that scale. That balance, between the personal and the expansive, is what gives the film its weight. In terms of legacy, this isn't the kind of film that dominates through immediate impact. It settles in slowly, it becomes part of conversations over time. The kind of movie people revisit, reassess, argue about years later. And in many ways, that's more valuable than instant acclaim, because it suggests depth, layers that reveal themselves gradually. Who is this film for? Not everyone. And that's intentional. It asks for patience, for engagement, for a willingness to sit with discomfort rather than resolve it. Viewers looking for clear answers might find it frustrating, but those willing to lean into its rhythm will find something richer, something that lingers. As a complete work, One Battle After Another stands as a reminder of what cinema can do when it refuses to simplify. It doesn't chase easy emotion or conventional structure. It builds something more complex, more demanding, and ultimately more rewarding for those willing to meet it halfway. And if there's a final takeaway, it's this. Not all stories are about winning. Some are about continuing. And sometimes that's the harder truth to face.